Hello, and welcome to another of the Zulu's Painting Show, the show where I try very hard to give you that delightful Bob Ross sound while also having to listen to my computer trying desperately not to explode. Today, we're going to be returning to the clan invasion box, where we'll be using our highlighting techniques that we've practiced in other episodes to finish up the purples, and then we'll be diving into some paint distressing. I like to have a mech that has a look like it's been through some combat. We're going to add some rust, we're going to add some chipping, that sort of thing. Not actually chipping the paint though, we're using paint to make it look as though it's been chipped. So let's go ahead and dive down to our models. So, we're returning to our Timberwolf or Mad Cat, depending on which faction you're used to playing. Last time we painted, we got started on we started with a zenithal primed model. We did a little bit of dry brushing to really clean up the color, hit it all with a contrast, and then started picking out some metallic details, and then we were doing some purple details. Now, in the description, I have, this is going to, sorry, one thing at a time. This is going to be our sort of end goal. You see we've got some, what looks like chipping on the paint. We've got what looks like some rust in a couple of spots. In the description of this particular video, there's a link to the video where I did this guy. Also, in a previous episode, I worked a little bit on this. So this is sort of our end goal for the first step for him. We're going to get that first layer of purple on there. We've got our metallics already done, and then we'll sort of continue from there. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. We're going to continue with our is it Nagrath Knight? I think. Give that a quick stir. Finally got some agitators for our paints, so the little paint stirrer in the back will now make a fun rattling noise, but that's the sound of it actually properly mixing the paint. So for these pots, the easiest way to get it onto your wet palette is to take, give it a quick stir, open your pot, grab some from there. You can also just grab it from inside. And then take your brush tip and sort of just roll it onto your palette. This will take a majority of the paint and put it on there for you. Then rinse off the end of your brush, because you don't want to, well, I mean, you might want a purple end to your brush, but if you leave it that way for all your brushes, it will build up pretty fast. One of the things that I very much enjoy about the wet palette is now that I have my paint on there, it's going to stay wet the entire session, and it's already had a little bit of the thinning done for me. So I'm going to take and wet our brush. We're going to be diving into with our regiment brush. Oh, there it is. Got to figure out where my where we're focused in today. So we got our regiment brush. We're going to go ahead and dive right in. Now, when I start getting my paint on my brush, what I'll do is I'll sort of spin the brush on the palette to make sure that I keep that nice sharp point. I want to make sure I can keep good accuracy with my brush. So I've already sort of established the how I want to do the colors on this side. So we're going to go ahead and hop over to the other arm, and we'll just transfer that same color pattern onto the other side. So, looks like we got some green showing through the purple here. Again, it's always better to have 2 thin coats than 1 thick coat. Sculpted, there we go. For some reason the word escaped me. Well sculpted models will sort of do a lot of the legwork for you as far as your painting goes, showing you sort of good panels and designs to work with, as well as giving you giving you surfaces to be able to use your dry brushing and washes on. Which all of that is to say, if the model maker took the time to make those nice details on your model, as a painter, you know, it's your, you can, you know, it's good to not cover those details up. That being said, as this is your model, you can sort of do whatever you want with it. So I'm noticing on this side, we have this little stripe here. We have a similar stripe on the other side that I did not make purple, but I might still. Also, now that I'm looking a little closer, I'm seeing these little guys on the side. I kind of want to turn those metallic as well. And that's kind of the interesting process of what we're doing, is sort of deciding where you want the different colors. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit more purple on the arm. I don't want to go too crazy because I just want my purple to be sort of a highlight color, but at the same time I also don't want to leave too much of the mech that doesn't have that purple. See, just a little purple stripe. That'll add a little extra to it. We'll come back to those. We'll decide what we want to do with those in a bit. Also, as of right now, because these colors are both very dark, sorry, by these colors, I mean the teal and the purple, they don't have a lot of... They look very similar to each other, so it's kind of hard to tell the two apart. We're going to be using our highlighting to really make these two colors look very different. I was going to make sure that the miniature is actually in frame and in our focal length. So I have, I was talking to my roommate about the high detail spots. The spots where a lot of times I'll end up sort of, let's see, let's change my focus to here. Yep. So on occasions I'll get very focused on a specific spot, and that'll cause me to go a little quiet. And he was actually telling me that as a stream watcher, that's a lot of times your sort of cue to look over and see what's happening. So I hope that's what is happening, and not that you are being frustrated by my silence. Also, I have to remember to make sure to have a gander at the chat every once in a while. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, directed insults, I would love to hear. Feel free to... Oh, I keep yelling at me to keep my model in frame. Might not go amiss. Although I do mostly know when I'm doing it wrong. After the fact, but I am aware of it. So one of the things I very much enjoy about this sort of step is getting to really sort of start to make decisions. Up until this point, we've been really sort of just, you know, just trying to get the color on the model and get it started. Whereas now, as we get to really start deciding, like, what parts do we want to sort of emphasize? What parts do we want to bring out? So now I'm thinking this panel might need that purple too. Again, I don't want to go too purple, but there's also a lot of green on these sections, so it could use a little extra purple. So that's what's kind of nice about having some time away from your model. When you return to it, you can really sort of decide how you want to change the look. So these panels are going to be interesting because normally when you're doing your highlights, what you'll do is you'll just sort of take the high points and you'll put the lighter color on, and the low points you put your darker color on. But as you can sort of see with this one, they're a big flat panel. So essentially what we're going to be needing to do is create that sort of that light to dark we're going to need to be sort of blending our paint colors, which is not the easiest thing. I do have a couple videos where I go over the blending process a little bit more, specifically on layering just colors. Alright, so I feel pretty good about the arms and the bunny ears. I don't think we really need any purple on the back, especially because we're going to be putting some purple elsewhere. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and slap some purple on the back of this guy. So we can just have that done. I would say that I left that little bit of white there as a reminder to paint this part purple, but that would be a lie. It just happened to work out conveniently. On occasions, I do, as I'm doing my sort of contrasting, try to think of where it's going to end up, where I'm going to be putting the other colors. But it's usually safer to just do complete coverage. That way, if you change your mind later, you don't have to try and repaint things. There we go, nice purple stripe there on the back. That one will be a lot easier to do the highlighting on, I think, just because it does have a little bit more sort of sharp, defined edges. All right, so there's that. Well, since we're back here, I feel like we should do a little bit more of this. This was kind of interesting. I gotta try to figure out where I want more purple in this. You know, I'm thinking these little back panels here and this back stripe. Oh. Finding areas with like those hard cutoffs are kind of hard or difficult sometimes. Trying to find panels that can be sort of their own individual piece. But this one has a nice cutoff line to it. There we go. A little bit of purple there. What's kind of nice about doing a paint job like this, especially when you have, you know, a whole star or group, if you will, is you can essentially start on your one Mac, work on it, get your purples down where you feel pretty confident, and then set it down and then come back and then work on a different one, and then when you come back to it, you'll have sort of fresh eyes. So you can sort of see like, oh, well, I'd like some more purple here. I think that I should probably put some more green back there, or turquoise, I guess, in this case. Okay, so there's this fun little sort of almost zigzag pattern that's being formed by these armor panels. I definitely want to kind of bring that out. Speaking of bringing things out, I'm going to bring my light a little closer. It's delightfully dark today. It's not great for painting. So yeah, let's go ahead and bring that. Let's go and bring that zigzag out. Oh, now we're of course deep in the woods here, so we got to make sure we're not clipping our other parts. There's that contemplative silence, that quiet of concentration. Now, this panel next to this zigzag here, I could easily have made that a metallic as well. But with the cockpit going to be a different color than both the others, I think having more metallic might have just muddied the mixture. So I'm okay with that being our turquoise. Teal? Turquoise. Not sure. I think technically on the contrast it's turquoise. It seems very teal to me. Oh, so for the BattleTech players, I am kind of curious. So the Timberwolf's sort of iconic look, it always has up at the top these sort of flanges there. Actually, I don't know what they're called flanges, but anyway, I've always been curious if those are part of like the cooling system, if it's part of just the general look. So if you guys have insight as to what exactly those are for, what are those for, I would love to hear. Oh, we got another stripe. I mean, I feel like that's just such a defined sort of layer. I feel like I can't not have that be purple. What I think is kind of interesting and fun about the way this particular paint scheme is working out is there's a lot of sort of purple sections, but for the most part, they're sort of contained and relatively small, whereas that turquoise is sort of all over the place, which is fun. Yeah, that's a good stripe. I'll do 2 layers on that because turquoise is really coming through. There we go. And yeah, what I really want is to be able to, at any given time when I'm looking at a mech from any given angle, to just have a handful of sort of highlights of purple, which I think we're really doing. Also, I really enjoy that from the top here, you've got that very light turquoise, but from the bottom, it's that very dark turquoise, which is really achieved by that Zenithal Prime. And the good old-fashioned contrasts. Well, I guess they're not good old-fashioned. They're relatively new, all things considered. Oh yeah, this does mean because I have the purple elsewhere, I'm not doing a purple stripe there. But I think to cover up that little foible, what I might do is have that be part of the distressing. So we'll come back to that. So that's one of the things that I kind of like is coming up with fun ways to sort of fix your mistakes. Okay. So with continuing this sort of the pattern from the arm, it's actually very convenient. I have the arm right there next to each other. So I've got this sort of protruding armor plate on both of these. I feel it'd be remiss of me not to simply make sure that both of those are purple. The difficulty is there's several sort of lips or sort of edges on this particular panel. So I'm going to make sure I don't make it go too far down. There we go. And then these nice big iconic legs. I feel like I have to this panel here just needs to be purple. It's a nice big area here. Now what's going to be interesting is, again, getting that layering. But also, as I kind of did on this guy, you can sort of play around with the sort of paint chipping. And I think I get some really good effects there. So that'll be sort of a perfect spot for those sort of wear marks. And especially you got to think of these as these are big fighting robots. For the most part, the sort of top of them isn't going to be interacting with, you know, most of the world. Sure, stray fire and things, but it's their legs that are going to be scraping off rocks and trees and buildings and cars and things. So the legs are really where you're going to have a lot of interesting damage. Looking forward to playing around with the leg damage. Well, that's what's kind of fun, I think, to think about when you're painting stuff like these is, not only is it what will be a good, interesting color scheme, but also, is this the sort of thing that would have taken damage? And for some of the mechs, it might make more sense for it to be like, no, this mech has its parade color scheme, like it's just fresh off the factory floor, or it's just been repaired, and because of that, it doesn't have that damage and distress. One of the things I enjoy about having sort of a larger collection of miniatures is being able to have sort of different levels for each of the mechs. So, this particular star will have a kind of distressed look, whereas I've been looking at some of the other Clan Cobra Galaxy color schemes, and they might be sort of fresh off the factory floor, sort of clean look, which will be a little bit more fun. Now, these guys. Do I add some purple striping there? When we're looking at it head on, we really only have the purple of the thighs. I mean, granted, we'll mostly be looking at it from the top here. But do we want to get those little things? So the other thing is they're very small. Very hard to get to. In fact, it actually could have been argued that those would make a lot of sense as the metal color. Ooh, I'm missing a lot of metal on the legs. I might go back and do those metallic. These are the questions. I've also got this that I'm not sure what I'm doing with. Yeah, I think these will look more fun with the metallic. So, time to get our metallic out. So I think we're good on the purple for the legs. We've got those panels there. We've got those big stripes in the front. We've got the purple of the front. Again, going back to especially BattleTech and Dungeons and Dragons miniatures, what I very much enjoy about them is they're sort of in many ways kind of each one is their own sort of character. So even though this guy I feel pretty good about, and this one I feel pretty good about, because each of the models are so very unique in their sort of design, it means that sort of how I color scheme each of them is very unique and individual. So I gotta grab an agitator for the paint. In you go. Sorry about the noise in the background. Just get a quick preview of this guy. Ooh. Yeah. Whenever possible, shake your paints just as much as possible to make sure they're properly. I had to tell you, agitators in a paint pot with a mixer like this, it's a fun one. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and for our lead belcher, which is going to be our metallic color we're using, we're going to do a couple things. Firstly, we're going to set our non-metallic water to the side. I'm going to bring our metallic water to the front. And then I'm going to actually put the metallic in my dry palette, because I've been noticing a tendency for the metallics to sort of dribble their metallic, or their metal flakes onto the rest of the palette. And I'm working to try and keep my colors sort of separate. Be interesting to see if we actually get to the corrosion part of today. I think the thing that'll be is kind of the more important thing to focus on for today is getting those getting the sort of color done. And I really want to kind of show how I do the how we're doing the highlights on, or sorry, the layering on the purples. That'll be good to work on. Missed a little bit there. That's okay. Actually, we're going even farther in keeping these things separate. I actually just got another regiment brush, so this will be our metallic regiment brush. I don't think you necessarily need to go as far as I am right now, but you know, might as well, right? There's no reason not to, and I got the brushes, and I got the water palettes, so still gonna thin out the metallics. I don't want to thin them too much, because metallics more than others will separate when you get them too wet. So you gotta be careful not to do that. And then, oh, we're getting in the weeds here. Oops, sorry. Oh, yep, I did it. So that's the trouble with little things like this, is making sure you don't get it on your other colors, your base colors. That's okay. Oh, and I already like that better. Yeah, add a little bit of that metallic to it. That's nice. Oh boy, what a mess. It's so difficult to get into such a small spot with... And I don't think a smaller brush would necessarily help me here, because the trouble is more just the spot that I have to get in is very small, or is very sort of thin. The area that I'm actually trying to paint is relatively big, all things considered. And we just got to make sure we're not hitting other parts that we don't want painted. And then of course this part will also be getting a wash to help bring out the details again. And you know, actually, speaking of creative ways to cover up the boo-boos, so since one of the things we're going to be doing is some sort of rust and corrosion, the spots here where I sort of I painted outside the lines, well, I think would be perfect candidates for sort of rust and corrosion to make it look as if it were rusted. Yeah, I like that. That is nice. A lot of times when you're trying to think of where things are going to get your metallics, especially when traditionally most of your mech is painted, trying to think of where there would be where there would be sort of friction and rubbing, and articulated points like the hip joints and things would absolutely be spots that would be worn enough that paint would have a hard time staying there. So what would probably end up happening is they wouldn't bother to paint it, they would just make it sort of be metallic to begin with. Same with sort of these heat sinks in the back, is those are going to be wear spots. You know, you're going to have stuff kind of coming through there. So having that be treated metal as opposed to trying to paint it would, I think, to me, make more sense. that being said, as you are the painter, you are the one that gets to decide sort of the logic behind all of your painting choices. So, you know, feel free to, even if you don't have a justification for how the paint ends up, you know, this is your model. You paint it how it feels right to you. Now that we've got that, I'm just gonna do a quick Nuln Oil just to clean up those spots that we just put the metallic on. So I have a question about storing my brushes to keep the tips nice and clean. We're gonna go ahead and bring the, so I keep them generally in, you can kind of see it here. I keep them there are holes in my paint stand, and so they just sort of live in that. And then for the other brushes, I have my paint stand up here. You can kind of see it. They live just right up here. So most brushes will come with little sort of plastic tubes that the bristles will stay in. Those work really well to, if you're transporting your brushes, those will work really well to keep it from them getting damaged. The other thing is whatever container you have them in, you want to make sure that they're not sliding around in them. So taking bits of open cell foam or even just some paper towels and things to really keep that pressure on your brushes to make sure they can't sort of move around in your container will go a long ways to keep them from getting the tips mashed. I also will spend a lot of time when I wash my brush, when I'm using my brush, sort of rolling it either on the canvas, or if you take your hand and you sort of squeeze it here and twist, you can point the brush that way as well. So that's one of the ways I do. I also never leave them in my water pots because you'll mash your bristles pretty bad. Even that though, you can kind of see it on. Let's see if I can show it. Yeah, you can kind of see it here. So I'm not sure why this does this, and I'm not keen on it, but as you can see, this brush has already started to sort of mush off to the side. It could be because this isn't a particularly high quality brush, or it could be just kind of how I've been painting with it. Let's see. Do I have an example? So I got another monster brush here, so let's see if it does the same thing. I've been needing to go through and just yeah, so this one's tip hasn't gone sort of wonky the way the other one has. But you can already see it's kind of starting to get ready to. I've been meaning to go through and like really clean all my brushes out. See if that helps with the bristles. But yeah, a lot of times for just normal use, just making sure that every time I either clean my brush or actually I need this brush. Ooh, stop hitting stuff. Anytime I clean my brush or anytime I get paint on the brush, really sort of spin it to keep the tip sharp. Is the primary way that I do it. All right, we're gonna grab some Nuln Oil, good old-fashioned black wash. With metallic, with silvers in particular, I really like to use the black wash because I feel like it doesn't add color, because your silvers are sort of, they're not really white, but they're essentially white for the purpose of colors. It's very receptive to receiving color. Now that can be to your benefit. For instance, I don't know if we got to it. With the Phoenix Hawk, those mechs, I do the metallic, but then I hit the metallics with a blue wash to sort of change the color of the metallic, which I very much enjoy. For this one, we're going to keep it more sort of traditional, because I don't want the focus to be the metallic. I want the focus to be the green and the actually honestly the focus on these models is really the purple, and then the green and the silver are sort of the backdrop on which they live. So, speaking of purple, I'm going to finish the leg here, and this is a thing that I forget a lot of times, has a depth to it, so I want to make sure that I get the sides of it to make it look as though it were an actual painted panel, as opposed to, you know, just a little paint slapped on the top of it. You could definitely do something where it looks like it just has the paint on the top, but that would definitely need to be a conscious decision. Well, doesn't need to. Probably should be a conscious decision you make, and not just something that you forgot. I'll run to that a bit. Perfect. Now, as you can see here, I touch my models before they're done drying sometimes. So this is a thumbprint for when I tried to take the model off the paint stick before it was ready to, before the primer was completely dry. So I should mention what I mean. So when I prime my models, I don't generally hold them in my hand because that's a quick way to just paint my hands. I have a wooden stir stick like you'd use for like a 5-gallon bucket of paint. On that, I have put bits of sticky tack, and then that's how I prime my models. So that way you can kind of hold them, you get a bunch of different angles, you can really make sure you get that coverage. It's also particularly helpful when you're doing your zenithal priming, because it's just easier to hold them and do your priming. So, we're doing a 3-layer for our purple. So we've done our base color. So now we're going to go to our second color, which is our Xeris purple? I think that's how it's pronounced. So yeah, let's hop onto our second color. So, the sound of an agitator. Properly mixing the paint. Love it. So, you can absolutely achieve this same level of 3-layer or 3-color layering simply by taking your base color and adding white to it, or another color to make it kind of more interesting. I actually have a video where I take green to a shabby tan. That's a very fun sort of color transition. Also, sometimes when you're doing a 3-color layering like this, you'll do your base color, you'll do a wash, and then you'll do a highlight layer. But because we're not doing a wash on this one, we're going to be using 3 colors to sort of... We have 3 different colors to achieve the same effect. So, now, where do I want to begin? Do I need... No, I'm trying to think of if I want to go to a... to the detail brush, or if I can keep with my regiment brush. I think I'm going to go ahead and keep with the regiment brush for now. I'm just going to bring this up so it's a little easier to work on. So grabbing back that regiment brush. And as you can see, there's not much of a difference in the color of these two. I mean, this one obviously is a little lighter. On the camera, it reads as a little bit more sort of traditionally purple, whereas this one is a little bit more sort of blue. So for this color, I'm going to be doing the top sort of third of these panels. Let's go ahead and start here. I'm just going to do a light bit of that purple. And for these, it's not that the lighter color is going to be where the light would hit, not necessarily where the orientation of the thing is. So the greatest example is we have these 2 panels here. So we have this one here that has this sort of top area. So we're basically, and this one here, which is oriented in a slightly different direction. So because we're doing the light of it and not the panel itself, they're going to have slightly different color, sort of, the colors are going to look a little different on each of them, if that makes sense. Also, not immediately grab the darker purple. I want to make a mess. And So for three color so we got an interesting thing already. So we've got this sort of purple here. What you know what we could do? Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do the entirety of the top here. And then do the entirety of the top here. There we go. Now you can really see those lines. And it'll look even more sort of pronounced once we get more of our colors on there. And we're going to mostly focus on this right side here, just so I can get to that third color. Obviously, you'll be using the same technique on the whole of the model. And once you've done one side, you're basically ready to do the other. So with these ones on the top here, what's nice is you've got this nice convenient, so you know, you've got your light coming in, it's going to be sort of easy to know where to put the colors. Now, what we also have is these top panels, which are just flat, which will be interesting. What I'm going to probably end up doing for that is, so this one's kind of easy too because it has a little bit of a curve. It's not the easiest curve, but it's got one. It's kind of hard to see. It's kind of hard to see for me as well. These colors are very similar, so for right now we can be sort of liberal with our application of the lighter purple because of their sort of similarity in color. It also means that we're not going to have to worry as much about blending. So for these ones, what I'm going to do is I'm essentially going to pretend that the front of the mech is our light source. So we're essentially going to make it look like it's sort of front lit. Now, if you had larger panels, you might make the sort of the center the light part, but because these panels are so very small, I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. Also, because I'm doing it this way, it's going to sort of emphasize the front of the panels towards the front of the mech, which gives it sort of a makes your focus come to the front and then move back in the same way that you start at the top and kind of move down. Okay. And again, because much like the front, what I'm going to do with these panels here is just actually do the whole top. And then where that line is, where it kind of drops off. So, let's see if we can. So yeah, on the top part there, the whole thing is that lighter purple, whereas the bottom part is going to be that darker purple. And what's funny is with my lighting the way it is, that just looks like that's how it is. So again, a lot of these colors will become a lot more apparent once we have our third color on it. The subtlety of the color difference is difficult to capture on this camera. All right, I'm not doing the left side. We're focusing on the right side so we can get to the third color. All right, and for some of these, like these zigzags, I'm going to go ahead and do a second coat of the lighter purple just to make sure we got that color in there. So I really want to make sure I got a good color. Now, for this leg, oh, we got this giant panel. Yeah, we're just going to, that top third, it's a little bit more than a third because of how it's sitting. Yep. It's very a subtle difference, but that subtlety will be nice. And again, when we get that third color on there, it's going to really sort of add to it. All right, so, oh, get those back panels. There we go. Yeah, it's a good start. All right. Time to hop on to our third color. Now I'm definitely going to switch over to my character brush so we can get those nice fine details. Because what I'm doing with this third color is it's going to be what's called an edge highlight, which means we're just going to be trying to get the very sort of highest edges, the place that would really be catching the light on the painted panels. Well shaken paint. Now you can really see the color difference between them, especially if you take the lightest color and the darkest color and put them next to each other. And if you were to put them next to each other, you could definitely do that. I actually have a whole video on doing very sort of stark contrasts in your color. It gives it almost a cel-shaded look. But for this one, I want to really sort of, I want a nice smooth transition. So yeah, these two colors pretty similar. These two colors very different. You know, it's a nice kind of subtle change. And then we're just gonna hit the very tops of the spots. So much in the same way that the light purple, or our middle purple, ended up being sort of the top third of the dark purple, this light purple will be the top third of our middle purple. But you didn't know you were doing math today. So you might have. And you don't need a lot of the very light color because it is so much lighter. Even just a little will go quite a long ways for you. He says before just slapping it on there. Yeah. Remember that using the side of your brush is a great way to get the paint on there without having to really use the tip. The tip can get a little wonky sometimes, but the side will sort of always be straight. So it's kind of an easy way to get just a little bit of color on there. Now because this is a much lighter color, we're probably going to have to do a couple layers to be able to really get it to work the way we want it to, but that's okay. We're doing just a little bit anyway, so. And also because we are using a much smaller brush, we're going to have less paint in the brush, so it dries a little bit faster. So, yeah. Using the same kind of principle. Oh man, why is... I don't know if it's the saturation or what, but this purple does not read well on camera. And yet, here I am, continuing to do it. Sorry about that, guys. We're gonna switch to some different colors going forward, so we won't have this trouble as much. But also, if you have any, if you do any video work, have any ideas of what I can do to sort of help purples show up on camera, I would definitely appreciate the help. So when you have sort of long straight lines like this, doing a single stroke generally can help with that straightness. That's not bad. When you have the different pressure of how much you're touching the model with your brush will change how thick the paint is coming out. Because remember, these bristles, as you press on them, are kind of so you've got them. They're sort of like here, and when you press on them, they'll sort of flatten out. So that'll change the width of your of the area you're painting. So trying to use the same pressure will get you the same sort of width. However, on occasion, that is very difficult to do. On occasion. Most of the time, I've found that that's very difficult for me to do. And then, yeah, so for this back panel, so this front side is the dark purple, then the whole of the top is that, I wonder if, oh, that is far too dark. The whole of the top part here is the middle purple, and so then just the top part of that is going to be the light purple. And the thing to remember is things like the tips of gun barrels, like say here, is going to be a thing that is going to be seen the most. So making sure that those are, you really spend your time on those is very helpful. Yes, this big fat leg. I'll have to do a couple layers on that as well. All right, feeling pretty good about most of that. Let's see, how much time do we have? Oh, we're almost out of time, but that's okay. Oh, gotta remember this back area right here. I was trying to decide how much time we'd have to do some distressing. I think we should try to do a little bit. Definitely try to do a little bit. And I think this thigh or this shin panel will be perfect for it. All right, so that's your basics of your 3-color highlights. Feeling pretty good about that. Like I said, if you go to, in the description, there is a there's another video where I go over the same process, but on this guy. Oh, can't really see him. This guy. So if you want a little bit more of that, you can go there. But for now, we're going to go ahead and finish out with doing some distressing. So you can kind of see it on this guy already. There are sort of 2 primary parts to the distressing process. Firstly, the idea is that most paints have 2 layers. First is your primer, and the second is your actual color. It's true of these models as well. And as they take damage, you're going to expose not only the primer underneath, but then also the bare metal. So it'll look kind of like I have used metallic on here, but in fact, for this particular effect, the metallic gets a little bit too shiny. So this is simply white and black. Let me show you what that looks like. We're going to go ahead and actually start with our white, got a matte white. Put that on our already white wet palette, so it will vanish. And for this, we're definitely going to use our character brush because we want nice thin, controlled lines. And for this one, we're gonna basically focus on the corners, trying to mostly get kind of thin lines at the very top, but then bringing it a little wider near this sort of junction point of things. So this part here. Now, you could definitely use the sponge for this particular method where we're at. If you wanted kind of more patchy spots, that's probably good. So we've got, generally when I'm doing these, I like to sort of do them on opposite corners because I kind of like how that looks. And then we're mostly going to focus on the very sort of edges of the panel. But we're going to add a little bit more inside of here just for extra sort of bits of damage. I mean, already it has a nice sort of like damaged, chipped paint look. When we add that black in there, it's going to add just that extra layer. And very similarly, very similar to our purple with the turquoise, in many ways less is more. You don't want to really just like, I mean, you could definitely have a mech that its sort of primary focus is the distress of it. You know, it's really been through the ringer. And in that case, it's more that the paint is becoming the highlight of this sort of damaged metal. But this one, I still want the focus to be on the colors and not on the sort of damage that's taken. We're just using this as a way to really highlight the metal panels. All right, so we've got our black on our brush, we've got our white on there, and then we're just going to try and in very thin bits just hit the very center of where the white is. We still, though, want to show the white on either side. So we're going to do our sort of side of the brush style. All right, there we go. And now we've got some paint chipping. It's very subtle. We don't want to go too crazy with it. And you can definitely do. So you've got these big sort of arm panels here that are mostly that green, and there's not as much detail on them. So you can add that on there. And you don't even necessarily have to do this sort of the classic edging. What you can also do, we'll do it on the arm as well, is while thinking about how they would sort of interact with damage on the field. So for instance, a stray shot sort of streaking along the arm of this guy would not be out of the question. We got a little bit extra damage here where it kind of continued, and then we'll go ahead and even put a little extra on the top here of a spot that was sort of worn. I want to add another thin layer because we really want that white to be the sort of emphasis, but we gotta make sure not to. I like the thickness of the line here, so we gotta not add too much extra. It's honestly one of the hardest parts about this particular technique is not making your lines too thick. Especially because now that we have that, we're going to try and put some black in the center of it to again make it look as though it has that damage. So before here on this side, oh no, we'll actually black that. You're trying to mostly have the white showing on the other sides. So you can see like this one here, you can see the white all around it. For this one here, you're just going to go ahead and put it all the way through the center. Oh man. Now comes the very difficult and sort of fun and difficult part. So really got to try and, because you want the white on both sides. There we go. Got some distressing there. I'm gonna bring the focus in just a little bit. There we go. And as of course the classic case, I need, because I don't really see as much of the white around the edge of the black. It's not doing what I want it to. So what I'm going to do is actually add a little extra white in on top of that to make it look more like the paint has chipped all the way around, showing off the primer underneath. Nope, and now the black is gone. All right, well, this is a sort of slow and difficult process. I am unfortunately out of time, but I'm very happy with how this shin turned out. So we'll be hopefully coming back to this so we can sort of re-examine. Or we might be moving on to slightly different colors that read a little better on camera. But until then, enjoy your painting. If you have any questions or comments, ideas of things that you'd like to see, feel free to put those in the comments. You can also, if you have specific messages, send them to zulusdnd@gmail.com. That's one of the emails that I watch. Yeah, other than that, thank you so much for watching, as always. I hope you learned stuff from this painting tutorial. We're going to be returning to Dungeons & Dragons miniatures next week. And yeah. Goodbye.